Okay, we are now officially live.
You're officially live.
And I've just heard, Michelle, from Amy. She is going to come in. For those of you who watch these live stream interviews, Amy's actually going to jump in about 2 minutes apparently.
Okay,
Her
fabulous.
train was delayed into Paddington, so she's going to find a quiet-ish place. I don't know if I've ever seen one of those in Paddington, but there you go.
Absolutely.
Right, so just for those of you who may or may not be watching this live or on a recording, again, basic introduction. Amy and I are writing a book all about sort of innovation, leadership, digital transformation within the real estate industry, and we know that not everything can make a book, and so we're recording all of these. Here's Amy now.
Oh gosh, you're super quick.
Hi, Ames.
Hi, Amy.
Is it quiet?
You found a quiet spot.
I'm having a train nightmare, so I've had to abandon my journey and find a cafe. It's one of those Mondays, so I'm so sorry, but it's lovely to see you. Hi, Michelle. I'm going to be on silent for a lot of the time so I don't disturb things, but I'm going to jump in with questions.
I don't think you're going to be able to avoid asking questions on this one.
I'm not going to be able to avoid it.
All right, so just to finish that off, and so we're live streaming these interviews for people to either interact with or watch in recording. So Michelle, please just give us a sort of a basic introduction for everybody to understand your job and everything, because you come from a slightly different angle to most of the interviews that we've got, so I think it'll be really useful for people to understand from them.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for asking me to take part. I'm really, really honoured to come on and give the view from a CX perspective. So I guess I haven't had a career in real estate. I know some of your previous people that have come onto these, that's kind of been their sort of background. I've been a CX practitioner for several years. I've worked across several different industries. I started actually out in the John Lewis partnership. And then I moved into banking, so worked in retail banking across Santander Bank. Was the Abbey National. I don't know if you remember the Abbey National. Went to the Abbey, that's how long ago it was. And then Santander. And then I moved into real estate a couple of years ago. And I've worked in sort of two companies since joining real estate. But no, I had no particular ambition, particularly to join real estate, other than that I took a career break to have my son when I was in banking, and then my job changed, and then I decided that actually I got approached by a real estate company, Crown Estate, to come and work in real estate to sort of start heading up CX for them. So haven't got a background at all in real estate. Have very much come from lots of different industries, but have always done CX.
Do you know, I'm gonna tell you a little story. And Amy, I don't think you know this. So Michelle, Amy used to be my neighbour. She used to live like approximately a field that way.
Okay.
And I don't even think you know this, Amy, but my first job was meant to be with the John Lewis partnership.
Oh.
Yeah. But the day before I was meant to start work with them, I was viewing houses with Foxtons, and I fell in love with the property sector, and so I phoned them up and said I don't want to work with you. Probably the biggest mistake I've ever done in my life. But no, it is really interesting, and we're going to talk a little bit about that sort of, you not being from the real estate world, because I find that quite interesting. And I've often said that I think the industry needs to recruit more from outside to bring the outside knowledge in. But talk to me, if you can. You reference CX as customer experience. Amy and I are very passionate about looking at the sort of the innovation and transformation journeys from slightly different perspectives, and being a customer-centric organization, we'll hear time and time again. So can you just give me or whoever is watching, listening, and will be ultimately reading, an understanding of the role that you play within a traditional sort of real estate company, whether that be obviously previously at the Crown Estate and now with Canary Wharf Group.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where do you get involved, and how do you get involved?
Yeah, I think when I first joined the Crown Estate, it was more of they had an ambition very much. I think the incumbent CEO was very much wanting to move from a sort of traditional landlord-tenant relationship into sort of much more customer-centric business. I think the market was changing at the time, going into much more flex space, and maybe it relied on people being in sort of much longer-term leases, but actually sort of weren't that close to their sort of end users or their customers. And so had been trying to find somebody within real estate for quite a long time, and actually couldn't find what they were really looking for. And then I was put on their radar as somebody that had been sort of doing some, you know, transformational digital type CX in the banking sector. And I ended up having just a meeting, and then it kind of went from there. So I think a lot of it at the beginning, and it's been sort of similar journey with Canary Wharf, but they were a little bit further ahead, was kind of going, okay, so what's the ambition here? How far do you want to go with customer experience? How, when I first joined, you know, is it a strategic priority for the business? If it isn't, how do we make sure that the leadership team, you know, because again, to really drive the focus to be much more customer, you need to have it being driven from the leadership team and understand it needs to be a strategic business priority and not just something that's an initiative. And so I think the CEO at the time there was very sort of core in getting it part of the strategic priorities. And then from there, it was the traditional type of CX. Okay, so what the biggest shock actually was coming into real estate and going, where's all the systems and data? Where are all the, you know, who's my top list of customers? Who's engaging? Where's the CRM? And being like, oh my goodness, it's not here. And so that was, you know, I mean, it's 8-9 years ago when I came in, but originally it was like, gosh, because I'd come from a world where had every bit of data on every customer. I'd had, you know, we had all of that mapped out. We had, you know, everything was journey mapped. If we made a change to something, like put a new system in, we would know how it would impact everything else within the organization. And it was a strategic priority. And a lot of investment was put on the customer and the customer experience. So actually, when I then came into real estate, we were sort of trying to do lots of really initiative things, but maybe whether it was a new development or whether it was a new technology transformation project, but the customer wasn't really at the heart of the decision making and the thought process. So I think a lot of my job there was to kind of work out what we had, get it as a strategic priority, and then look at the overall strategy and then build out a roadmap, and making sure that some of the strategic priorities and deliverables that we were making there, we were engineering that much more around the customer. So I think that was in the Crown Estate, and there was lots of different things that I implemented, from voice of customer programs, insights programs, and new digital platforms that we put in, and things like CRM were obviously clearly needed to be on the agenda, and some of those kind of basic foundational things that were not there. But I've come into Canary Wharf Group, and actually you know, it's much more ahead in its thinking around customer. Didn't have a dedicated role, but it's much more being ingrained in the kind of values of the organization. So actually coming in there, it's again setting it as a strategic priority, but also then driving that piece around, okay, so who are our end customers? What data do we have on those customers? How do we interact with those customers? How do we want to interact with those customers? And when I talk about customers, I mean the residents, the visitors, the office worker, anybody that interacts with our space. I come from a banking world where everybody was called customer. So in real estate, it's quite different. I don't talk about occupiers and tenants. You know, at the end of the day, they're purchasing a service from us, so they are a customer. So, you know, everybody sort of says, well, who do you mean? I mean, everybody. It doesn't matter they're a visitor coming into the shopping centre. They still need an amazing experience, just as so much as an office worker working in a sort of large business in our estate. So Canary Wharf Group, being particularly the CEO, Shobi Khan, he's been really passionate about bringing in somebody like myself, and then really working out, you know, how do we get closer to customers? How do we engage more with customers? And then how do we offer a value proposition around customers that's so much more about what they want and maybe not necessarily what we're thinking they want.
This is so interesting. Can I jump in and ask a question? And there'll be background music, which will make it really ambient for everyone. My question is, what are you seeing in that data about customers? Is there anything that you find particularly interesting? Are there things that are changing at the moment or since the pandemic? What do customers want?
Yeah,
what are they looking for?
I think particularly around office customers. I mean, I go out and engage with probably sort of, well, a lot of the top 30, I call them top 30, our top strategic accounts across Canary Wharf, some of the large organisations which you'll know that we have there, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, Barclays, those types of companies. And I think, you know, a lot of what they talk to us about, and I think my I kind of have a different lens, because I'm not going in just to talk. I don't have to go in and talk about the space. I'm talking about, what's your business doing, and what are you trying to achieve, and what's your business priorities. And then some of the things that then, as you do that, you kind of work out, actually, there's some solutions here as a real estate company where we can actually really add value here, and where we can really convene in a like a mini city that we are in Canary Wharf. And so some of the things, challenges I think companies have flagged to us is that, they are coming into the office, in a more hybrid way. But when they do, they want to make sure that maybe the younger generation are really connected into their business. So, and there's a lot of people that come in graduate programs, or different ways that they join those businesses. And how can we provide a much broader network for them? And something that I've just launched in the last couple of weeks is something called Wolf Connect, which is a network which is free for people in our estate, any company, to join, and it allows them, hopefully it will allow them to network with each other. So actually that is us solving a problem that companies are having, which is, how do we get people to come and engage? How do we get people to engage with our space, but also want to. And it's broader than that. It's about how, you want them to come in and be like, I'm in Canary Wharf and I've got friends here and I've got a community here and I want to be here. And I guess that drives more people then to come back into the office, because they're coming in because maybe they've arranged drinks with people, or they've got a networking thing. And it's about us sort of convening that. So I think there's spaces where we can add much more value above just offering a space. And I think that's kind of the area that I've definitely stepped into with the leadership team. It's around, what can we do to support these businesses? So then it drives long-term value back to us, because I think I won't say their name, but a large occupier, he said to me, gosh, I've been here for years, and this all these new things that we're looking at doing across Canary Wharf is just a really differentiating, it's a real differentiator for places like Canary Wharf, because you'd have just gone into your office before and just stayed in there, and you were working for that company. And we're trying to change some of that with the way that we're changing the estate.
I'm going to use a quote here, Amy. You ready? Since the very start, Canary Wharf has been defined by an audacious vision, here we go, of what a city can be, of what urban life at its very best should be about, which I thought was a really nice quote on your main website about this sort of the Canary Wharf sort of development. And was it 120 odd acres, I think, isn't it, if I remember?
It is, yeah, 120 acres. And I think it's, it started out as one of the sort of, largest regeneration projects. And actually, if you hadn't been to Canary Wharf in the last sort of couple of years, I mean, the new CEO that's come in has really changed the whole estate. So, we've now got residents there. We didn't have residents before the pandemic. We're getting more build to rent there. And the residential part is just, it brings with it a different set of requirements. We're opening up a place called Flip Out, which is like a children's entertainment type place, which you just wouldn't associate that with Canary Wharf. And so I think that sort of the financial services part is obviously a really important core element to it. But the diverse set of visitors are driving a different set of things that they want from the estate. And so it isn't just about nice restaurants, and we have those. It's about different services and different amenities, which again is very, very different. Where we have a lot more visitors at the weekend than we've ever had before. Where you used to be Canary Wharf years ago, be really empty at the weekend, and now it's just it's pretty much just as busy as it is in the week, because the visitors are coming in. Because again, the offering is so much better, because we're listening to customers and we're then trying to provide what we think that they will interact with.
So I'm going to bring in Amy, the sort of the non-Amy angle here, because Amy could talk about the customer all day long and the culture and all the beautiful fluffy things. And I get it. Otherwise, obviously, you wouldn't be talking, because I know how important understanding of a customer journeys and everything that you talked about at the start is to the transformation journey. But one of the things that I can't get insights into necessarily, and this is very, I think it speaks to the people who are skeptical about the role that perhaps customer experience plays into a sort of a more of a real estate company. And that is about judgment. How are you judged in the role that you have, and how are the projects that you've done with the Crown Estate or now with Canary Wharf? How is it deemed successful? What are there KPIs that you're measured by? or should there be others that you think there should be? Just talk to me around that area for now.
Yeah, I guess coming from a banking background, you know, they wouldn't invest in CX unless you have clear return on investment and clear KPIs. So again, that is absolutely what I would have put in place at the Crown Estate. So we're very much used to do lots of insights. So we would have net promoter scores, or we would survey customers, and we would gain sort of insights through the data to sort of understand, you know, what were the measurements of success. And I think particularly any project that I've implemented, whether that's been sorry, I've got a bit of a flu thing going on, Amy. Whether that's looking at transformation projects or new technology, or whether that's just redesigning a process, absolutely, I always start with, you know, why are we doing this? So what's the purpose of doing this? What problem are we trying to solve by doing this? So what's the problem statement around that? And then where's the measurements of success? So every single project, I'm about to deploy a technology, a customer intelligence platform in January. And with that platform, it's very much like, what are the drivers of success? Exactly the same with the tenant engagement platform. How many, you know, what's the success criteria? It's going to be, how many people are going onto the platform? So are they registering? Of that, that's great. You can get loads of people to register, but they're actively engaging with the content. So then what's the active usage look like? How many times that we survey customers off it? What do they tell us, and what do they want? I mean, our platform gets like a 9 out of 10 rating every time we do a survey, because people love the tenant engagement platform. So I think there are lots of measurements that you can put around what you do. And I think with CX, it isn't just fluffy. It's very much a strategic sort of discipline around a lot around process capabilities and sort of systems data insights, and then a lot of measurement actually goes around it. So people that CX practitioners are really big on measurements, because actually that's where you build out your proof points to then go, well, actually we did this and we drove this much value to the business, or we did this and this is how successful it was. And then you can then scale up, because then you can go, well, you know, and a lot of CX practitioners do a lot of sort of testing. So we will say, well, let's test this and pilot it, and then we'll then scale it up. And what's the proof points of doing that? Okay, so it's done this, and this amount of people have engaged with this, so let's then scale it up. Even the Wolf Connect that I spoke about, we're only piloting with a couple of businesses. Let's test it, let's measure it, let's make sure it works, and then we'll scale bigger, instead of just going huge and then kind of, you know, going, oh, it didn't work. So I think a lot of what CX practitioners do is measure things like lifetime value of customers and the success measures around projects. So and then I think that then builds the business to go, God, this stuff actually really works. And we need to invest in this, and we need to do more of this, and we need to focus more on the kind of CX, because you have clear proof points of success. It allows you to do more.
So if you were to pick out 3 measures that you feel are fundamentally important for any CX practitioner who's going into a sort of a real estate role, what would you recommend to them?
I think if we were looking at sort of clear KPIs of measurement, it would definitely be around NPS, or some sort of customer satisfaction measurement, because again, it's all about your customer, and you know, ultimately you're putting these things in, and what do they think about the things that you're doing? So to them, is it adding value? There'd be something around the return back to the business. So whether that's you wrap around sort of, you know, X amount of customers, and then how do we track and measure the success of those particular accounts? So whether it's a top 30, top 40 type program, and a lot of that has been bought from banking, because they operate in a key account model. So again, you would take, you know, they might have 14 million customers, but maybe they focus on X amount of customers, and then they track the value of those customers over a lifetime. So they would say, you know, have they taken more business with us, or have we retained them as a customer, and how long have we retained them for? So I think there'll be a measurement around the retention of that customer. I would say they're probably the 2 things. And then I think I would have some measurement around then any sort of transformational project that we're doing, measurements of success across those. Because I think as a CX leader, when you're coming in, particularly into somewhere like real estate, you need to understand how it's going to impact the customer and drive them value. How's it going to drive value back into the business? And then if you're doing new innovative type projects, what are the measurements of success?
Can I jump in with a question about frustration? So I think that understanding customers is fundamental to any kind of innovation. It's where it all has to begin. It's where, what frustrations are you seeing in customers in the moment? Are there are there particular sort of things that people are complaining about? Are those changes since you started working in this industry?
Yeah, I think I think the general customer trends change. I think you know, the digitization of the experience is absolutely changed over the years. So I think customers, you know, when I worked in banking, going into a branch or going on the contact center was absolutely fine. But actually then it all became about apps and the app experience. And I think anything that you put in place, so the tenant engagement platform that we recently put in about 12 months ago, you know, those types of things have to be seamless, because, you know, you're not being compared to another office that's got a tenant engagement platform. You're being compared to like Amazon or, you know, those types of providers where you're using their services and you're going, well, I can do this, and that happens really quickly. And then you come on to something else and you think, God, that's so annoying. It's such a clunky experience. So I think people have become a lot less patient, and, you know, want things instantly and quick, and want responses quickly. So I think that's definitely the whole digital experience, particularly for CX practitioners, is we've definitely all gone that way into digital because we've had to, because the experiences all become a lot more digital. And that can be, that's the whole journey of CX, have gone very digital.
Does that impact the way that you pilot things? So, because I guess in the past it was, you know, we talked a lot about failing fast, didn't we? And a customer's a bit less forgiving. Does that mean that when we take a new digital offer out to customers, we need it to really be perfect? Are we past the point of being able to sort of give it a go and see what happens?
Yeah, I definitely think that people are less forgiving because people want things instantly and people just want things to work. So you get people get more frustrated, I think. I think where people don't have digital processes and it's a manual process, I think those days have gone. People just want to have, I think people want options. You know, if you were coming into a large place like Canary Wharf and you were trying to do something, you know, if you want it, you want the digital experience, but also maybe then you want to be able to also speak to someone if you needed to. So I think people don't want just digital. I think there's options there. But it's definitely gone much more. And I don't think it's just about, a lot of what I do isn't actually just necessarily what the customer wants. It's about employees as well. So actually, you know, you can't deliver great experiences for your customer unless the employees have got the tools and capabilities they need. So a lot of what I do is looking at, okay, so how do we deliver for customers, but actually have we got the tools and capabilities internally to be able to do that? And I work really closely with directors of IT to work out, you know, okay, so we've got this need here in the business to be able to engage more with our customers, but what do we need to make that happen? And so what digital technology do we need to make? And so again, I think, and then that then becomes that, you know, internally, I think people are a little bit less forgiving as well, because people just want to be able to do their jobs really well. And they need the capabilities that they need. So, but a lot of testing and piloting, I think, just to try things with a small base of customers, or even internally, if you're doing something new, you know, setting up champions group and testing things, I think it works before you scale. So yeah, definitely get your proof points before you then start to roll it out to everybody.
And can I just, and I think you might have already answered part of this question, but the question's about adoption. So we all know that, you know, one of the biggest hurdles to implementing a new innovation is getting users to adopt it. What do you have any advice that you can give people about how to ensure, you know, better engagement, better adoption with new offers?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think a lot of people think, well, if might have a digital project or a digital product to put into a business, they think, well, it's a great product, so it's going to work. I absolutely think no, not at all. I think you need to firstly understand, you know, the narrative around why you're doing it, so that people can kind of buy into that. So I think that's really important. So we're doing this thing because it's going to give us X, Y, and Z. And I think that's providing that scene setting. I think getting some people then on board that are really going to champion it for you, that, you know, you can get on board with it really early, because so bringing in those expertise together, because those are the people that, you know, are either interested in it, in what you're doing, and then getting them sort of, you know, championing it through the business. If I go back to this customer intelligence platform, you know, the adoption piece for me, it's about having a really good comms plan, constantly communicating it to the business what you're doing, and then really sort of then, you know, setting up drop-in sessions and setting up training sessions, and then doing it all over again, because again, have you got mapping out then what the success factors are for something? So Are people adopting it? Who hasn't adopted it? Okay, let's go and speak to those group of people that are not on board with it yet. Is it because they just aren't quite sure how it fits into the way that they work? It's doing case studies. So actually, I haven't even got this platform out the door, but actually I've already done several case studies to communicate to the business around the people that are testing the platform for me, how it's driven more business their way or how it's driven value to them. So again, bringing it to life for people, because again, people connect with people connect with the emotional bit. It's not just fluffy CX. I'm going to come back to that one, James. You said that at the beginning.
You're in trouble with both of us now.
You can put a great process in place, right? But if it doesn't do something to help you, if it isn't something that you resonate with and that you get, and it makes you think, oh, this is going to make my day a lot easier doing this because it's going to save me time, whatever. People just can't bother and move on to the next thing. So I think again, it's connecting people so they think actually this is like the tenant engagement platform. I've got the most users of one of the Equium platforms. It's got the highest amount of users of one of their products that they've rolled it out to. And I've got nearly over 40,000 people on that platform. And that is all about adoption and understanding what the end user wanted from it. And now we have such high engagement rates of that platform. So because we've built it and designed it around people, and technology is one thing, but the human in it is so important. And so I think a lot of these, if you can bring both elements together, then you've got a winning combination.
I think we would love, if possible, to use that as a case study on adoption in the book, because I just, the points that you've laid out there they're just brilliant. And I know that they're absolutely evidence-based. And I know that you've done something that proves that it works. So I find that really exciting. Thanks, Michelle. I think that's a wonderful example of how adoption works.
I'm just going to make sure, Amy, that we call that chapter something like the fluffy case study or something.
Don't. I've been years battling that.
Yeah, but it's funny though, isn't it? I mean, you're right, because it's often perceived as a soft skill, a fluffy skill, and that is the frustration about traditional leadership, which is they don't understand the value of that. And I'm purely quoting, funnily enough, an old leader of mine who's saying it's all fluffy, load of rubbish, and that's why I use it with actually quite a lot of looking back on it from my own side. But just touching back onto that case study, because I think we should mention this is Equium, and the wonderful Bronnie who introduced us, and she and I are like ships in the night. We always sort of see each other and then we don't get to talk, and it's been, honestly, it's like a running joke for years. But just sort of walk us through that again in terms of how do you feel the rollout of Equium through Canary Wharf was different to the way that other people have done it? And was it that you analysed how it's been done before? How did you go about sort of building out the strategy you did, and how does it differ to other people in your mind?
Yeah, I guess my perception is when I came in, the whole sort of putting an app in, one of the priorities for the business was how to engage further with end users of our estate. So that's what got me into the, so actually what type of app platform could we put in? And I met loads of different app providers. Oh my God, there's so many out there. I mean, where do you start? But for me, again, it's about partnering with a company that I trust and partnering with a company that I feel that kind of gets what I'm trying to achieve. And met with Bronnie and the team, and we decided that, through the tender process at Equium, came with a sort of I think a lot of the difference between these providers, there's so many of them, and I'm not from real estate really, is that a lot of them say, here's the platform, that's that. I'm like, well, what's going to happen after that? Where's the support? There's a technical support, but actually Equium we have a community manager, and they can then work alongside you, or you can recruit somebody yourself who is an owner of that platform, and they can then work with our team. So it kind of felt like it wasn't just a technology thing that we were doing. It was also very much, and I think very much kind of, have we got the right people and capabilities in place to be able to deliver it? So that's why we went with Equium, and then
you had a formal sort of tender process in the first instance to get the business in, and from that point on, how did it manifest itself to a rollout?
Yeah, so again, looking at the overall strategy around everybody, sort of all the providers that we looked at, and including Equium to a certain extent, sort of saying, well, it's building by building, and that's how you kind of get these things in. It's access control, it's visitor management, it's And again, I was like, but we've got all these visitors to our estate. You know, we have 52 million visitors to the estate. You know, all these people coming in. Surely we want to showcase what we have available to everybody, and not just the building by building by building, because actually that's just capturing the people in the building. Why can't we do something much broader? So, which is why we actually did it slightly different, which we went down the campus route. So we looked at, okay, how do we put something in place for visitors? So we segmented by visitors, office workers, and a resident. So they're the different segments. And then of those, if I was to log on to the platform and I was an office customer, I want something very different to as a visitor, but we co-created the platform in a way that different end users of the space get a different experience depending on how they log in. So we actually launched with visitor because I needed to learn a little bit more about, okay, how do people interact with us? And obviously of those visitors, a lot of them are going to be office workers that, you know, happen to register for the platform. But what is it that they're clicking into? What things are they interested in? What things are they searching for? So actually one of the things that people were searching for all the time, we were in East London, where are halal restaurants? So, well, why are we not telling people about this stuff? Or how do I, is there any baby type stuff? Or is there this, or is there that? Or you know, events that, you know, that they might have been looking for. So the search engine of that helped us, you know, I guess, define the overall strategy for the app, because what are people looking for when they come to the estate? But actually then it allowed us to then segment by end users. So if you're an office customer, yeah, there is access control and visitor management, but that is not the only way that people are going to log on to this thing to use it, which is kind of what everyone was telling me in real estate at the time, is they only use it because they have to, because of access control. I just didn't find that at all. We got 20,000 users on before we even started the office part of it, which was the kind of the second phase of the access control and visitor management. But we've really enlivened the content on there. So, you know, we've looked at, okay, what people searching for and what people clicking into. And because we have got that platform in place, our retailers as well have access to the platform. So we have 380 retailers and restaurants, and they all access the platform. Again, I was told that they probably wouldn't. They did. So again, they can put offers on. So if I'm an office worker coming in for the day, yes, I can use my access control and put my visitor in. I can then see that the Hawksmoor's just opened, or a Dishoom's just opened, or you know, the Canary Wharf are going to be doing a transformational project with the Eden project, or I can find out what's available around me, not just literally what's going on in my own building. And so that particular sort of, it's become kind of quite a large tool now, and we've got over nearly 40,000 people on the tool, you know, and it's just growing all the time. And this year it's really grown quite significant. We put events and things on there, and people have to use the app to book. So we did a big event with Stephen Bartlett from Dragon's Den earlier this year, and it was bookable via the app. So then that drives people to the app, and then they can see everything else that we have available to them. So again, it's being used as a kind of total end-to-end engagement tool, and we just keep growing it and expanding it and building out. So the adoption piece actually was because I think it got adopted so well because of the fact that we had good content on there, and we're building the content based on what people wanted. We then have been very lucky because we have built up really good relationships with our office occupiers, that they allow us to go into their businesses and either communicate it for us on their channels, or they've linked with our app. So they've deep linked, or they have allowed us to do pop-ups. So where we come into their office space and we promote it, which drives absolutely hundreds of people to the app. And JP Morgan is our highest user of the app. They absolutely love it. And we've got so many users on from there. But then that leads to everything else that we do. So we do an event, most people come from JP Morgan. If we do this, most people come, because it's, again, it's driven by the fact that we've got such visibility in that particular business. And you're giving value back to that company as well, because you can say to them, well, this amount of people in your business use this platform. And that's not even from an access management or visitor control, because we don't control that business and that building. This is purely from a visitor perspective, that people come to the estate and can see value from that product.
Amy, I'm going to go general, if unless you've got something you want to go into with Michelle.
Go ahead.
Cool. And I just want to go back a little bit on sort of transformation more generally, because of your experience previously with, so you said about the banking sector, then you went into the Crown estate, and now Canary Wharf. How have you found working on several transformation projects across different businesses and different industries? Have they differed, or do they follow a similar path? if they differ, where is the difference? Is it because of leadership? Is it because of industry? Is it because of different customers? Just sort of talk to me about that for a little bit.
Yeah, I guess from a retail and banking perspective, there was a lot more governance and process set up for transformation. So it was kind of a really clear path. You know, you wanted to do something in an organisation. This is the steps you took. This is where you went and got sign off. You know, the process was really clear. And then you would have quite a large transformation team that would help you deliver those particular projects.
In-house.
Yeah, in-house. But coming into real estate has been quite different, because I think sometimes initiatives have been, you know, gone through quite swiftly, but also sometimes it's been like, okay, so what's the process for this? How do I get through this organisation to understand they've got this idea? How do I take that from an idea to actually get through kind of the business, and what's the sign-off processes, and who do I need to get involved in this? And, you know, it's not maybe been as quite as clear. I think particularly coming into Canary Wharf, I feel it's quite entrepreneurial business. Right. So actually coming in, I think that's made quite a difference. You know, that whole innovation and allowing you to be a bit entrepreneurial and kind of testing and piloting things and moving things through. I think that has been something that has been amazing here, because I've only been here 18 months and I've already done about sort of 2 or 3 transformation projects on top of sort of my normal job. So I think that's been really, really good. I think definitely a leadership piece is key, that they want you to innovate as an organisation. I think sometimes I find real estate is quite like perfect. Everything needs to be perfect. I don't know if that's the right word. It feels a little bit like, from my perception, that you can't roll something out, you can't do something until everybody's seen it, or everybody's looked at something, or there's like committees, or, you know, lots and lots of, we had process in banking, but it was kind of a little bit more quicker pace, and the decision making was quite quick, even though it was such a scale, and there were so many teams and capabilities in place to kind of, that was the process, and then it went into that team, and there was a transformation team, and you could get it delivered quite quickly. I feel sometimes like everything needs to be a little bit perfect, and the kind of, it's changed a little bit coming into Canary Wharf, because it is testing, and can we, you know, trial things, but even getting people on board with sometimes that type of mentality of trying and testing things. It feels like in real estate that people don't always want. There is a big, I don't know, it's maybe risk averse or cautious. I don't know what it is.
I think they're quite comfortable with the way that it's always been done, and it's a process, and we're comfortable. But let me just explore that a little bit further. And I'm really interested in the perspective around ESG and transformation. I know how central ESG is, for example, within the Canary Wharf Group, and how essential it is. And it is, you know, you've got some really fantastic reports. But I have, I suppose, a thesis that technology innovation within the built environment is really it's a driver of change, but it's not actually the change itself. Mentality shift is actually the change. But one of the main drivers is ESG.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what you've just said there about having transformation teams in the banking sector, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, you said that transformation teams and built transformation processes, which meant that things were a lot quicker, and you were able to follow processes which were set up and in place, and as a consequence, it was a bit seamless. Whereas perhaps in real estate, it doesn't quite work like that. I'm seeing a lot of ESG teams all of a sudden, you know, heads of sustainability, or, you know, ESG manager or something like that. But I'm never seeing heads of transformation or heads of innovation. And as a consequence, have we sort of run before we can walk? And are we stilting transition because we haven't perhaps worked out our transformation processes first?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in sort of 2 real estate companies, and that sort of not having a PMO in place, or not having, you know, where product management office. So that's kind of your transformation team. And actually the Crown Estate where I was, they were putting in a PMO, because actually realized that how do you I think what they tend to do, those transformation teams, is, you know, you've got like 50 priorities as a business that people want to do, but how do you focus down to a couple of priorities? How do you make sure you execute them brilliantly? How do you make sure you've got the capabilities in place to deliver those projects? Where it feels like in real estate, there's lots of stuff happening all the time, and lots of initiatives and lots of ideas, but it's not maybe always pulled together into that sort of structured framework that you get in the financial services. I think things kind of, you're right. I think that things kind of pop up. So the CX stuff and ESG is being driven by sort of, changing priorities, and teams are coming up. So there's lots of people, and actually even office occupiers, they'll talk to us about, oh, we now need to report on this. So we're putting in this person and we're getting a new team in place. But I don't think all of the other bits are thought about. So how do you really sort of transform your business? Because again, and I'm not an area of expertise, but it's just what I've worked in these organizations doing a lot of transformation. But do we have the foundations in place to really accelerate these types of agendas? We've got a brilliant director of sustainability, Sophie Goddard, that's coming to our organisation. She's super experienced. But again, it goes back down to the foundations of, do we have the data to support what we're trying to report against? Do we have the right capabilities? Do we have the right processes? And I think a lot of, again, similar journey that I'm going on, or have gone on, is, again, how do we put those things in place? Because a lot of them have been quite quick to put a commitment out there, but then maybe haven't necessarily thought about what's the sort of foundations that you need to put in place to deliver against that. Okay,
that's really interesting. Thanks, Michelle. That's helped formulate something in my brain, which I think is really interesting. I think the only thing, and Ames, I'm going to stop hogging the questions and let you come in before I sort of finish with a final question in a minute. But I think my only concern about, as you term it, a PMO coming in is, and correct me if you think I'm wrong here, but the broadness of the built environment, and you look at Canary Wharf with your retail, your office, your residents, there is such a broadness around an understanding of all the different facets of the built world that I suppose being a transformation expert across all asset classes, across all customer types, across all technological types must be a really hard job. And I might suggest, maybe I'm wrong, that financial services doesn't quite have that broadness, or am I wrong?
Yeah, it's corporate banking, retail banking. It's you have all the university side of it. It is quite vast. I think, and also you've got to remember they have like 14 million probably direct customers. So they're banks have huge volume of customers. It is different. However, I think it's about there's lots of both real estate companies have worked in. There's been lots of initiatives, lots of ideas, lots of stuff going on. But again, putting that structure and methodology around, what's the success factors of this project? How are we going to implement it? Have we got the right people in? Have we got transformational people? Have we got project management managers? Have we got program managers? All those types of things. Sometimes we kind of go into these projects and we rely on a lot of external expertise, but maybe haven't got all the in-house capabilities to deliver it. And then maybe it's not that they do happen and they happen successfully, but I think they could probably happen with a bit more pace if we had, like you're saying, people that are dedicated innovation people, or dedicated resources to deliver some of these projects at scale. And I think that's probably we can be a bit lean on some of the things that we do. And again, it's that those expertise aren't always sitting there. So yeah, but they still managed to get things delivered. And we still managed to transform and do all these great things. And I think a lot of the real estate companies have been amazing developers of space, and they, innovative buildings, and they look amazing. But sometimes it's not necessarily designed completely with the customer always at the center of the decision making. So I think some of that's starting to change now, particularly because people are obviously changing the way that they operate in their businesses.
Fair enough. Ames, you got anything else before I kick off with my final, hopefully testy question?
Oh, testy question.
Well, I hope it's a thought-provoking one for a customer.
I have a sort of visionary question about what is the change in the future industry. What would really excite you? Is there anything that you can think of off the top of your head?
I excite me. I think I think already it's starting to happen, because I'm already seeing so many people like me from other industries coming in. So that's exciting. because again, it brings in a different discipline and different set of expertise. I came into real estate and I was probably one of the only ones, one of the first people from a different industry coming in to deliver CX. And actually now, you know, there's a brilliant lady over at Argents, and there's somebody that's just recently joined Great Portland Estates, and you know, right away across, it's been, you know, people like myself are starting to kind of come in, and when I speak to them, I'm like, oh, you're from real estate? They're like, no, I'm from, you know, this industry, or you know, I think somebody I spoke to originally was from Vodafone, and they're really big on that sort of CX piece. So it's really good to see different disciplines coming in from different, because you know, different sectors being brought into this industry. So that's really exciting, because actually, you know, you feel like you're not the only person sort of battling away. That it's really great to meet up, and we have regularly been meeting up. And I think when you're in a CX space, you don't necessarily think about just the competitiveness of it. It's there, but it's very much more about how do we share ideas, how do we grow, how do we understand, how do we improve things for customers. So I think there's been a lot more, that's quite exciting for me, seeing all of that starting to come together.
And that diversity of thought is absolutely essential, isn't it, when you're trying to bring about change?
Oh,
absolutely. You know, and I
absolutely.
guess that's one of the things that holds back more traditional industries, is that, you know, you don't get as much of that diversity of thought and experience into the way that you plan things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I definitely think it brings a different lens, because ultimately, as a CX practitioner, all you're trying to do is bring the voice of the customer into everything.
Yeah.
You know, you're trying to, whether that's the employee perspective, because sometimes it is internal customer, because actually internal customers deal with employees. It's still, you have a customer, whether you're finance and you're providing a service to someone in the business, it's that type of customer. And then it's also then the external customer as well. So I think, yeah, it's been, and it's quite nice, because other industries are doing things and we share, then you can bring that back to your own business and say, well, actually they're doing that. That's really, really great in the CX space. You know, we need to start thinking about that. And I think that will start to drive different behaviors as well, as other companies start to invest in this area.
Okay, final question. I was very rude calling it fluffy earlier on. So
yes, you were.
I was. I'm sorry. This is another, I think, quite contentious topic, actually, around understanding the customer. And I think what we're starting to, we're at the very start of learning about customer being important and listening to our customer, and we adapt because our customer is asking us to do something or other. I'm just going to put it to you that is also a negative. Mm-hmm. And by listening to our customer, we're not thinking outside of the current customer to the future customer. Do you have a perspective on that? Because it's known really as the innovator's dilemma, which is we innovate because we're listening to customers, but actually by listening to customers, we're not in fact innovating for the future. Do you have any perspectives on that from a real CX practitioner perspective?
Yeah, I think the listening to your customers is almost like the now. And almost looking back, because you maybe ask them for feedback on something or whatever, or insights, or you know, what do they sort of think is their perception. I always I went to a CX thing years ago, and I remember somebody talking about, you know, that when Apple launched the iPad, and them doing a whole piece of research, and everybody said there's no way we would use an iPad. And I think that just always resonates with me, because I think actually sometimes it's not like anybody's asked, you know, I was looking at, you know, leadership programs that we're doing like Wharf Connect, or looking at those types of concepts. No one's saying to us, Canary Wharf Group, you need to go off and create a group for the leaders of the future to come and network and connect with each other. We've gone, okay, so some people have given us some feedback. How do we then find a solution to that? And I think that's where the innovation comes in. I think going back to that iPad thing, I mean, God, look, they launched that, and it's, you know, people were saying about back, you know, Nokia and the bloody iPhone, that it would never be a success. I mean, you know, you can't always base on customer feedback. I think that just informs what your strategy is going to look like, and it's good to bring that perspective in. However, sometimes, you know, as innovators, you just need to then go, I think this is going to be a really good thing. I think this is going to be a really great idea. But I think I've always, whatever I do, it's always based on the foundation of the insights. So it's always based on the, okay, so we've got this problem here, or we've got this thing that customers have raised us, that we potentially, how do we play a part in that, or what can we do to innovate in this space? And that's led to lots of different initiatives that we're doing at Canary Wharf. I mean, nobody said go and partner with the Eden Project. However, we knew that coming out of COVID, people wanted to get connected with nature and be much more, we wanted to soften the estate. And so the partnership with the Eden Project, we hope that whole biodiversity of the estate is something that people will love, and it will transform the look and feel of the estate, putting the green spine through it. Nobody said to Canary Wharf Group, you need to go and partner with the Eden Project and you need to go and transform the estate and make it green. But we did know that people were in this space telling us this was important to them, and changing behaviours can then lead to some really innovative ideas. So I think that's what I would say to that tricky question, James.
And I mean, you're on exactly my page in that sense. But how does a CX practitioner factor that in to bringing? We talk about bringing people on the journey with you.
Yeah.
How do you bring people into the more speculative, customer-centric ideas that it's either a gut instinct or it's the research and the reading that you're doing? How do you bring your CEO, who you've been talking about as being wonderful and inspirational, how do you bring, in this case, him along on that journey with you to be able to think about the next bit, not just where we are now? I'd love to hear that journey for you.
Yeah, I mean, if I take the Wharf Connects, that's just my most recent one, or I can talk about the customer intelligence platform, either one. I think a lot of that was going back down to here's a business case. This is what I think is something that we should be looking at. So going to the leadership team and talking them through, whether that's case studies or talking to them about, this is how much we could invest in this. This is what we think is going to be the outcome of that. This is where I think we can add value to our customers and to our own business. And so I think it all comes back to then presenting a leadership team, doing a strong business case, really mapping through what are the measurements of success that we think that we could have here, how much investment. And then even with both of those initiatives, it's kind of starting with, okay, let's do it with a handful of companies. It's going to cost X. Let's just see where that goes. Let's also talk to those companies before even going into doing something like the Wharf Connect, which is the leadership young professionals network. We've gone out and said, look, we're thinking of this idea as customers. What do you think in an office space? Is this something you think that people in your office workers would really resonate with? And then bringing that perspective back, because again, you're doing the research and you're doing the fact finding on it before then just going, I've got an idea, I think this would work, let's just see how we go, please can I have some budget for that. It's much more about, we've gone out and spoken to people, we think that this is something that would resonate with the idea that we've got. So the research, I think, is really important, getting the feedback, building out a bit of case studies, piloting things, and then once it's going well, then scaling.
Okay. Can I have one more sneaky question? Have you got time for one more little one? Because I think it's quite an important one. And only because I'm assuming you've done this with Yolanda at the Bartlett Institute. Yolanda Barnes, was that? You've done it?
It was, yeah.
So you getting involved with the Future Leaders program there as well. Just from an interest perspective, what perspectives have you got about being a future leader? Have you got any advice for sort of not the leaders of today, because I always think the leaders of today are perhaps not best placed for this, but the leaders of tomorrow perhaps will be. What would you suggest are the best attributes we need to be future leaders?
And that is really interesting, because again, this young professional network that we're launching, we've obviously gone out and spoken to young people, future leaders, around kind of, what do they want from the network and what's important to them. I think it comes back to, again, what we were talking about, Amy, about changing behaviours. I think integrity of an organisation, having a clear sense of purpose has become really sort of important to that younger generation. So how purposeful are that company? How do they say, they're going to, what they say, are they going to do, that type of piece. So I think that sort of acting with integrity and having a clear sense of purpose, I think, is really important. I think also, let people know that it's important that everything doesn't need to be perfect. Sometimes we try things and we fail. And I think that future, generation and even now generation, it's so important that you can try things and you can innovate and that you can test and pilot, and so that you can learn from things. And I think that is really important. So the current leaders, making sure that everything doesn't need to be perfect, that you can try stuff, I think is how we learn, and that's how we sort of move things forward. I think personally for me, having somebody as leader that's really empathetic, so having really good understanding and isn't just kind of, we're there to do this. It's kind of very much listening to people in their business and having really strong empathy and listening, and I think they're really important qualities. But yeah, I think, and one of the ones that's really big from the younger generation that we're getting through from our research is about having that sort of sense of culture of learning. So, really important that they upskill, really important they learn and not kind of become complacent in an organization. I think it seems to be that the younger generation want to learn, they want to move through businesses, they want to, not necessarily join an organization and stay for 20 years, like I did with Santander. I was there 15 years. They want to stay for a couple of years, they want to be upskilled, they want to learn, they want to train, and they want to move on. So I think there's that piece around sort of giving people the space to sort of learn, I think is really important. So so hopefully that is useful on that last question.
Yeah, it is. Ames, anything to finish for you before we let Michelle disappear after what is already the second longest interview that we've done? That shows
it was just really to say amazingly insightful and really, really useful. So grateful, especially if you're feeling ill, Michelle. Thank you so much for taking time to talk to us.
No problem at all. Yeah, I normally don't sound this. I was saying to James at the beginning, I actually don't have a very deep voice at all. But I'm just like, oh god,
perfect.
So yeah, I sound very, very, very sort of husky voice. It doesn't normally quite so deep. So but yeah, no, thank you for giving me the opportunity to come on. I have to say, I did have slight imposter syndrome, thinking, oh my god, innovation leaders, what am I going to be talking about?
No, it was brilliant, honestly.
Just in that last answer, for me, you've encapsulated what an innovation leader of the future is, or a future leader is, which is they have to have empathy. And I think it's one of the most serious aspects of lacking at the moment, which is we are beholden to one way of leadership, and actually the leadership of tomorrow is not necessarily going to be a certain track that we've had for too long. So that's precisely the reason why we want that is a sort of the customer angle on here, because companies of tomorrow are not where they are now. So that's why. But I'm just going to end this stream because otherwise we'll go on forever. And then so just publicly, Michelle, thanks ever so much for your time, really.